Good evening from Washington. I'm Laura Ingraham, and this is the Ingraham Angle. We have a fantastic Friday lineup tonight, all live, lots of breaking news, including just a few moments ago. The president issues an order banning most transgender troops from serving in the military. We're going to explain why the president is taking this stand coming up. Also, a new study claiming that the Border Patrol agents don't really want a wall. What? Or you're going to understand once we tell you who's behind this report. Plus, the profanity-laced interview from one of the organizers of tomorrow's gun control march. Won't believe that. And Roseanne floors Jimmy Kimmel with a stinging rebuke over Trump on Kimmel's own show. And Rosie O'Donnell has painted herself into a corner. That'll be fun in the Friday Follies. But first, we begin with the monstrosity that is the Omnibus bill, now signed into law. Score one big one for the swamp. President Trump said he was very disappointed with the bloated $1.3 trillion spending package. He even threatened this morning, getting our hopes up, that he was going to veto it because it failed to fund the border wall. It did nothing to address DACA. Still, in the end, he signed the bill.
I say to Congress, I will never sign another bill like this again. I'm not going to do it again. Nobody read it. It's only hours old. Some people don't even know what it is. $1.3 trillion. It's the second largest ever.
So why did no one read it? Well, I realize it's like 2,232 pages long, that's all. But that's all the more reason to read the thing, or do normal course budgeting where it's bill by bill and you can actually digest it one department at a time. But Trump said he signed the omnibus because of a desperate need to fund the military and that he had no choice because of a looming government shutdown. But let's face it. It pains me to say this. The president did have a choice. He could have called Congress back to town and made them pass a continuing resolution until his priorities were funded and we explained this mess to the American people. I tried, in vain, to warn him many times this week. An omnibus spending bill is, this is what you have to know, a legislative scam. It's a business-as-usual spendorama at a time when voters expected just the opposite from a president who campaigned against the corruptocrats in D.C. As I see it right now, tonight, the wall's never going to happen. Because as we've dug into this and really looked into this, this bill doesn't fund the wall at all. We can do better. We must do better. Or Republicans do not deserve to be in the majority. Well, voters elected Republicans to both houses of Congress and gave them the presidency to shrink government spending and to shake up the system, not expand government and give in to the system. This is like Christmas for Democrats. I mean, domestic spending goes through the roof. Chuck Schumer's like the cat who ate the canary. He gets his pet rail project. Planned Parenthood, totally funded. Meanwhile, Trump gets a fraction of what he wanted and zero, and I mean zero funding for that big, beautiful concrete border wall. On my radio show this morning, in 3 hours, not a single caller, and I wasn't trying to weed out callers or make it all cute here, but not one wanted the president to sign this legislation.
Get that pen, veto that bill, because it's a pork-laden bill.
America's a family. It is in debt. That means saying no to some fun stuff, some good stuff, even some popular stuff, so that we can actually have a chance for survival.
President Trump, we are with you. The American people are with you, but you need to be with us. Fight for us, President Trump.
This bill should be vetoed. I voted for Donald Trump. I was a strong supporter of Trump to stop this sort of thing. And it just needs to be, he's got to take a stand now and stop this.
If Trump doesn't veto this bill, he's going to have to write a new book entitled The Art of the Steal.
Is this the president's first serious breach with the base? Well, let's ask the only member of Congress with a PhD in economics, Republican from the great Commonwealth of Virginia, Dave Bratt, and Eric Beach is the co-chair of the pro-Trump Great America PAC And Mustafa Tamiz is a Democratic strategist. Great to have you all late at night on a Friday. It was really important stuff. Let's start with you, Congressman Bratt. It broke my heart. And you could ask like my staff. I was really down today. I felt personally really depressed. I was in a funk because of what happened. He got our hopes up that he was going to veto it this morning. But then, the military guys was like, you got to fund the military. You're going to kill the military off. And he ends up signing it. And he said he wouldn't do it again. Tell us how this went down.
Well, I think you had it right. It went down, and the hint to the American people is it went down in the same way it's gone down for the last 10 years in a row. And so it's like Groundhog's Day. Whenever you're running up to the date, you know it's going to be a disaster. And that's your big hint, right? Why can't you rationally plan the budget ahead of time? You know you need 9 votes in the Senate, right? That's the huge obstacle. We did a budget. The Senate wouldn't do a budget. The Democrats want increased spending on everything. So all that's a given, right? So the president and leadership need to go to the American people at the beginning of the cycle and say, OK, we're going to give the Democrats this, this and this, but we're going to hold strong on this. And if you shut down, it's on the Democrats. And so we didn't go through that. And then I'm on the budget committee a month ago when we did the budget. This was the spending bill. But back in the budget, the Senate actually wrote in the budget that they will not do a budget for the year coming up in 19. They don't even want to do a budget because they don't want to have a tough vote. And so today that made news. Rush Limbaugh covered it and Sean Hannity covered it. And so President Trump can go to the Senate tomorrow, and we can still get it right in this year's budget. If you don't do a budget, you don't get to do reconciliation. That's a big fancy word. But that's how we were going to get rid of Obamacare until the Senate tanked that one. And they owe us. And that's how we got taxed through. Yep. So we got to move this on. But when the president says, I'll never do this again, I'll never vote for this again, could it be that he'll never get a chance to vote on something like this again, Congressman, given what we know happens in the U.S. Congress with spending? Yeah, well, I hate to get pessimistic, but the base is dejected. And so he needs to come out and not only say, I won't do it again, but take the initiative and show him what he's going to do in the next few months and force it on the Senate. Yes, you're right. This may not happen again. Because the Senate said we're not going to do a budget this year.
Thank you.
And then God help us, if we lose the House, then it really won't happen again.
Right.
We're in a unique opportunity right now to hit it out of the park, and we've got to do that in the next months before November.
Mustafa, I want to go to you because I was watching Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and all these Democrats. And I had some Democrats on this week, and they were in the best mood. They were like, we're getting Planned Parenthood. They were like thrilled. And I said, if I were you, I would be really happy too. And I just said, I got to hand it to you. I never thought this would happen, but I got to hand it to you. This is what Wolf Blitzer said after the president signed the legislation today. Let's watch.
He signs this, Gloria, into law, 2,200 pages, even though he says no one has read it, including himself.
Right.
Which raises the question, why sign something into law that you haven't even read?
Well, so he's not getting any credit for it. He signs it. The Democrats like it. But Wolf is right. No one's read this legislation. Rand Paul was tweeting some of it last night, but who knows if he even read the 2,000 pages. This is crazy, Mustafa, for Democrats or Republicans. This is generational theft of the next generation. Your response?
$1 trillion in debt. Look, what I liked about the bill was the children's health insurance has been funded for the next 10 years. I think that's really important. And then you also saw $250 million for democracy programs in Russia and sanctions in Russia. So I thought that got passed and nobody saw that. I thought that was probably a very good thing. But I think Republican voters have to ask themselves, they've voted for a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and a Republican president, and they're still not getting what they want. So in this 2018 election for the midterms, they should ask themselves, should they be voting for Republicans or should they be voting for libertarians? Or should they be, sending a message to Republicans and not voting at all or voting for even Democrats? I mean, that's what the Republican voters should be asking themselves.
Eric, I want to go to you on this because I hear a lot of spinning. A lot of spinning. Oh, the military needed a race. We all love the military. But every time we end up mortgaging our children's future, all we hear is, well, we need the military. Of course we need the military. But that's not an argument. That's false equivalency. But that's what we hear every time. The Republicans rolled this president. There is no border wall. There's 33 miles of fixing the fence and some sensors. It is a travesty that they convinced him early on that this was going to be a real border wall, and it was not.
Well, they certainly lied to him. But also, I do think the president was very heartfelt when he talked about we need to make sure that our military is not depleted. And that was the sole reason why he agreed to this omnibus bill. In saying that, it's a trashy bill. The Freedom Caucus even discussed that. And I agree with Mustafa. I think the great irony here is, there's 4 leaders in the Republican, 2 in the Republican, 2 in the Democrat side that sat in the room and did a 2,000-page bill that didn't tell anybody about it. And the Republicans actually think they can win elections. I heard practitioners talk today that the Republicans can win elections. But I agree with Democrat Mustafa and what he said in terms of this. If you want to vote Republicans into the House or the Senate, then vote the right kind of Republicans, the Rand Paul kind of Republicans. Because otherwise, we're going to go down the same road with the same parlor game, and that's what's undercutting the president at the highest levels.
Well, but the president could have come out today and said, you know something? I've been pawing through this bill. On page 734, look at what it says. Well, we actually increase funding for a department we said we were going to decrease funding for. We actually have ridiculous projects to enforce other countries' borders while our border is will still remain porous. He could have done that. It would have been really bold, and it would have been, I guess, sensational. But Congressman Bratt, that's how he won the election, by defying the establishment, the conventional wisdom of the media. He looked right at them and said, I'm calling you on your you-know-what. And he could have done that today, brought them all back to Washington and said, start over, because you are perpetuating a fraud on the American people. Dave, and I want to get your thoughts on the transgender troop ban as well.
Absolutely. You're right. It's a false choice. You can do the military and get the Goodlatte bill in, right? That's the fundamental piece on immigration, which is polling higher than Obamacare for Republicans. And so we failed on the premier piece that he ran on and that the American people want. Wages have been flat for 30 years. And everyone from Bernie through President Trump wants to fix the mess and the swamp. And so he could have just come back to town, said, let's do a 2-week CR, and made some major moves, and the whole country would have been behind him.
Yeah, it would have been gutsy.
It would have been gutsy, and that's his strength. He's got a good gut for it.
Yeah, at least we get $1.7 billion a year to maintain 770,000 empty buildings, square feet of empty building office space. Okay, so this is what we got that money. I want to talk briefly about this transgender troop ban. The left's going to go crazy on this all weekend long into early next week. And Congressman, Commonwealth of Virginia, big military state. This was taken after some concerted study on the issue. The statement of the White House today is, among other things, the policies set forth by the Secretary of Defense state that transgender persons with a history of diagnosis of gender dysphoria, individuals who the policies state may require substantial medical treatment, including medications and surgery, are disqualified from military service except under certain limited circumstances, according to the presidential memorandum. Do you have any reason to believe that the timing of this is to placate the base? That's the cynic in me is saying, oh, they're throwing this out on a Friday night because the base is up in arms, or this was planned?
Well, I mean, I think that's probably President Trump's guts, and a lot of folks aren't happy with playing social science with all the major institutions in the country right now. The primary thesis for the military is national defense, and all these were just distracted. The Democrats aren't so hot on policy, so they do this identity stuff throughout every major institution we have. The FBI's blowing apart with the top 10 people being either fired or stepping down or leaving. We got to get back to basic business, not running $trillion deficits every year as far as the eye can see.
Social engineering in the military.
Trump,
I'd throw that into the mix. Social engineering in the military. We don't need to do that anymore either. But we have a fighting force. We need to maintain a fighting force. And as far as soon as they allowed transgenders to go into the military, it was January 1st, the policy went into effect. As of February 23rd, one transgendered person had signed up for service. God bless the person who did that, but that's the total so far. Guys, fantastic segment. We have a lot more to get to here, including a fake news alert. Border Patrol agents say, oh, they really don't want a wall. At least that's how the New York Times and the Washington Post reported it. We'll tell you the truth and what's going on up next. President Trump smartly asked for $25 billion to build the border wall, but Congress gave him $1.6 billion, and some of it for fencing. Border Patrol agents tell us that they are livid over that, but the mainstream media is saying just the opposite. A New York Times headline yesterday declared, "What border agents say they want, it's not a wall." The Times cited a survey put out by Senate Democrats that claimed border agents really just want more technology. But the Department of Homeland Security says Democrats got it all wrong. Let's get to the bottom of this with the president of the National Border Patrol Council, Brandon Judd, and the Laredo, Texas representative of that council, Border Patrol agent Hector Garza. Gentlemen, great to see both of you. Brandon, let's start with you on this. I saw this, and I've known you guys for so long. I've been friends with so many in the Border Patrol since 1996 when I first started in the media. When I saw this, I thought, this doesn't even pass, the straight face test in any way, shape, or form. Your reaction?
That Democratic staff report is nothing more than garbage. It makes me sick knowing that the taxpayers funded a report that is nothing more than a partisan hit piece on a president whom they hate and want to see fail. We can't allow the Democrats to lie to the American public. Senator Johnson needs to call for a hearing on this issue. It needs to go before the Senate Ethics Committee. And we've got to investigate this and get to the bottom, because I can tell you, I just finished my shift a couple hours ago patrolling the border. I speak with hundreds of agents on a daily basis, and all of those agents are telling me we need walls in strategic locations, and we're going to prove that we need those walls.
Hector, here's what the Democratic study says. Okay, we have a full screen we'll put up. Border agents and sector chiefs rarely requested a wall. Only one urgent and compelling request mentioned either a wall or fencing. Most commonly identified vulnerabilities called for tech personnel. In your experience, Hector, with everything you guys are up against, does that ring true?
Not at all, Laura. I work in the Laredo sector. In the Laredo sector, we do not have a single mile of border wall or physical barrier. And the Laredo sector is next to the Rio Grande Valley sector, which is the busiest sector in the nation for drug crossings and for people that are coming across illegally. So now we've called for a wall in the Laredo sector because just in the Laredo sector, we have across the border, we have the dangerous drug cartel known as Los Zetas. They are very dangerous. They bring a lot of drugs into our country, and they also smuggle a lot of people into the United States. We definitely need a physical barrier that's going to save American lives.
And you guys, you might have heard the segment we just did on this budget that just passed. There's no money for more detention beds. There's no money for that big, beautiful concrete wall that we had heard about for so long. The president wanted $1.6 billion just for the wall. There's like $640 million for a variety of things, and maybe 33 miles or different reports say, I think it's 33 miles for reinforced double fencing and some levee walls that are already there. But this is no new construction. So, Brandon, I'm hearing you guys are on the front line. The cartels are coming. We got the human trafficking, people just trying to cross because they want to work here. Others, we don't know what their motives are. And we're like, well, we're going to have some sensors and we'll have some roads and maybe we'll have some more detention facilities.
No, the Republicans are shooting themselves in the foot. The president ran on a campaign of domestic policies that were going to secure the American interest, and one of those was the border. The Republicans aren't doing what the constituency wants them to do. And if they don't jump on board and if they don't get behind this president, if they don't secure the border, they stand to lose huge in the midterms. We've got to have the Republicans get behind this president. We've got to get rid of the swamp, and that includes the swamp within our own agency if we're going to expect to hold the House and the Senate in 2018.
Hector, this is what the president said today. Again, he didn't like the fact that he had to sign this, but he did go ahead and sign it. Let's listen.
We're going to be starting work literally on Monday on not only some new wall, not enough, but we're working on that very quickly, but also fixing existing walls and existing acceptable fences. There are some areas that you have to see through. You have to be able to see through the other side in order to see what's coming. And in many cases, it's not a pretty picture.
Oh, my God. Okay, number one, Hector, just explain the part that we need to have see-through wall. I mean, I understand you do need to see kind of what's happening on the other side, but I don't think there is going to be any physical wall being built because there's no money for the wall. It's all repairing the fencing that exists and the levee walls that are already there and some of them crumbling. But can you shed any light on that for me? Because I've got to frankly buy a vowel. I don't really understand it.
Well, it's just very unfortunate that we can't get a border wall, a much-needed wall that we need so that we can do our job, and that wall is going to save American lives. And it's just very unfortunate that some of these representatives are actually playing games with our jobs and with our security. We need to stop playing politics, and we need this wall. It's no secret. Our Border Patrol agents have actually reached out to President Trump through the National Border Patrol Council, and they've told him that we want a wall. President Trump has done the same thing. He's spoken to our agents directly, and the agents have told him, President Trump, we need a wall to secure the border. And that's what we need so that we can do our job and so that we can save those American lives and stop those drugs from coming across.
Brandon, I have to read for you. You're going to love this. This is Senator Claire McCaskill. I know you guys are texting buddies. She said this, okay? She's on the Homeland Security Committee. This report reinforces what I've heard from frontline border agents and CPB leaders alike, that the top priorities for addressing vulnerabilities along our border are additional personnel and better technology. We can't let politics get in the way of our efforts to strengthen border security and protect our country. She said that also Paul Ryan has been very chipper about the idea of all these sensors and the drones and the other accoutrements that are necessary, I guess, to enforce the border. But what I understand from Israel, and what I understand from you and all the years I've known you, without that barrier, it makes your life more difficult at every turn. And Hector, I assume you would agree. But Brandon, you first.
Laura, we've played that game. We've thrown all kinds of technology at drones, at sensors. It's interesting that the Democratic report quotes former Deputy Commissioner David Aguilar. David Aguilar now sits on the board of Drone Aviation Corp Industry. Obviously, he doesn't want a wall, because if he gets a wall, he's not going to be selling drones. If people aren't crossing the border illegally, there's no need to buy drones. We've already done that. We don't need to do it again. We need to build the physical barriers that are necessary.
Yeah, you think about it, Hector and Brandon, you got the sensor companies, you got the drone companies. Everybody's looking for a piece of the pie, right? All the money that's going to be invested. But if it's just the wall and the extra personnel and so forth, it's a lot simpler. It's a lot simpler. Guys, God bless you for the work you do. Keep it up. And the American people, and I know so many of our viewers at Fox and on radio and beyond, they're just with you 100%. So keep up the great work. And by the way, Jimmy, absolutely. And Jimmy Kimmel is put in his place by a comic legend, while Rosie O'Donnell is taking out her political aggressions on canvas. Friday Follies next. Time for Friday Follies and a little fun. Anderson Cooper is looking like the host of The Bachelorette. And Roseanne Barr puts Jimmy Kimmel in his place. But we start with the fine art of Rosie O'Donnell. Here's Fox News contributor and best-selling author Raymond Arroyo. We need some kind of kicking feet for Friday Follies.
A musical intro.
Yeah, we need a musical. We need we need something going on here. Okay, so Rosie O'Donnell has taken up painting.
She has. You'll remember earlier in the week I exposed Jim Carrey's political art. We even did our own. Jim Carrey put these bizarre pictures up this week of Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Can we put that up, please?
Yeah, let's show those. And then he offered an explanation in a documentary about his fine art. There it is. I mean, this is something that a grade school child on too much Ritalin might create. But nonetheless, here's his explanation for this, I guess you call it art.
I think what makes someone an artist is they make models of their inner life. They make something physically come into being that is inspired by their emotions or their needs or what they feel the audience needs.
Art has to be service.
He's offering a service to people. It's his inner life. If this is what his inner life looks like, oh my Lord, it looks like he's painting on a rubber room wall in that studio.
Yes, look at Bruce Almighty. God help us.
Well, after I saw this, and now Rosie O'Donnell has taken up painting, and as you can expect, it has the same subject. ... Donald
They're
Trump.
obsessed.
Take a look at this.
Okay.
She started painting on her iPad with her finger. And she says, she started doodling and sadness, rage, and disappointment flamed out of my finger. She claims
I like the close-up there. That's really...
Oh, look at that.
Oh, move.
Fake. Wow.
Move over, Rothko.
She said, I can't help but what comes out of me, my anxiety takes over. She said, I had to go to my bunker to figure out how I was going to make it.
Looks like a self-portrait, if you ask me.
This is, I have to tell you, I've read a lot on this over the last few days because of you and this show.
Yeah.
Painting is a therapy they suggest to people with anxiety disorder because it helps them work their aggressions out on the canvas. That's what I think Rosie and Jim Carrey are doing. Now, here's what she's named her 4 great works.
Okay.
The Moron, Lunatic Trump, It's Over, and Too Bad Trump. One wonders if the president were to take up painting Rosie O'Donnell, what he might call his great work.
Mm-hmm. Let's look.
She's a slob. Rosie is a loser.
Maybe that. Maybe that would be the title of the work.
They have something of an obsession. I think he needs to get a restraining order because we get it, okay? He has kind of a tan face. We get it. There's no subtlety. I mean, art has to have some subtlety to it, does it not?
She said she doesn't want to be part of the president's world, but he's eating her alive. It's a compulsion. I mean, something is definitely wrong. I think she and Jim Carrey might seek.
Can we go to Roseanne
help.
Barr, who I actually like?
Yeah.
So she's reviving her sitcom, which I confess I did not watch. You know, you're either a Roseanne fan or you weren't, and it wasn't my thing. Although a friend of mine actually wrote for the show, like years ago.
It was in the top 10 for 11 years.
Oh my God, it was a huge hit, but it just wasn't my thing. So she's reviving it on ABC because everything old is new again, because they're fresh out of ideas. But this actually is an interesting revival.
This is very interesting in that you have a working class family where there are political divisions. Roseanne's character supported Donald Trump. The rest of the family, 20 years later, it's been 20 years since it was on the air.
Wow.
20 years later, they have division. Think of All in the Family. I think this could be huge because it's a place for people to laugh and have a conversation that they can relate to about making ends meet, working hard, and the political divisions that come with family life. Now, she was on with Jimmy Kimmel. He attacked her for slipping away from her liberal roots. Watch this.
You were a very liberal, socially liberal person in general. I mean,
I'm still the same. You all moved.
We did?
You all went so far out, you lost everything. A lot of us, you know, no matter who we voted for, we don't want to see our president fail.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah, no.
It's interesting to hear the people clapping
There
in
were a
that
lot
audience.
of people clapping, and she went on later to say, look, we have to support the president no matter who that is.
Tom
and she got around.
Tom Arnold's got to be kind of conservative. I don't know.
Well, what you see here, though, is somebody who I think has her finger on the pulse of the people, and that working class, middle class, the show The Middle, Everybody Loves Raymond, those shows were huge hits, and they continue to be hits. I think Roseanne
Hollywood
could,
has gone so far left that they've forgotten the people of the country. So
It
this
just
is
gives
very
a voice to
interesting.
a different.
You don't have to
point of view.
endorse anything, but just at least represent them.
Okay, we've got to get to Anderson Cooper.
Anderson Cooper why is he the go-to person to interview women who've had affairs with
female porn stars?
Yeah,
Just female
why
porn
is he
stars.
why is he the lucky guy who gets to do these interviews?
He's starting to look like the Bachelorette, the host of the Bachelorette. Look at this.
Yeah.
Is the steamiest, most drama-filled, unexpected ending in Bachelor history.
Did he have any nicknames for you?
He would call me baby, or he'd call me beautiful Karen.
Did he ever use protection?
This is the Anderson Cooper, whom I like.
You just gotta like wrap it up at that point. If that is it, if that's the apex of your career.
An hour of this, it's really degrading, I think, to a guy who's interviewed world leaders. He treated her as if this were Angela Merkel or something, you know, talking about the global debt.
Angela Merkel having an affair with Trump.
But that would be an interesting hour. Angela Merkel for the hour. Okay, so Stormy Daniels' interview coming up next. So I guess this is going to be an ongoing series for Anderson.
When are we going to open up CNN's closets? None of these other people have any. CBS didn't have a problem, did they? They had no problem. I think they all better be very careful.
Okay, we'll do that on the next English.
All right. And one of the students organizing the anti-gun march on Washington throws a pathetic, profanity-laced tantrum. Doesn't surprise me, but it might you. Stay there. The March for Our Lives gun control protests are set to take place nationwide tomorrow. Washington, D.C. alone is bracing for about 500,000 demonstrators to take the streets. You should see Union Station right near where we are broadcasting. And as we can see from the new cover of Time magazine, more than a march to the mainstream media is practically a coronation of the new leftist heroes, the kids who have become the public face of the movement. But some of these students' recent actions and words are, let's face it, less than classy. Let's discuss what's really going on here with the editor-in-chief of Campus Reform, Lawrence Jones, and G2 Brown, national director of the Journey for Justice Alliance. And G2 will be out there encouraging the students. And there's a lot of, people are very stoked and very excited about what's going to happen tomorrow all across the country. So that's a good thing. But let's play what one of the main faces of this movement, David Hogue, who I think we first had on television, this show, a month or so ago when the horrible shooting took place. He did an interview, and it was posted on YouTube. Let's watch.
They could have blood from children spattered all over their faces, and they wouldn't take action. I think what sick are out there that want to continue to sell more guns, murder more children, and honestly just get reelected. What type of person are you when you want to see more money than children's lives? What type of person does that?
And it went on and on and on. Not sure what that accomplishes. G2, tell me what your reaction is to that. I mean, the YouTube tried to pull it down, but a lot of people had made copies of that interview and reposted it. But YouTube pulled it down, saying that it violated their standards of bullying and harassment, which I found, I don't know how it violates bullying and harassment, but nevertheless, your reaction to that.
Well, first, Laura, thank you for having me back on. And I would just say that often when people are confronted with conditions that are not being addressed, I don't blame them for their anger. I don't blame them for their frustration. I think that, and I've been in that predicament where, issues of justice were not being addressed. Common sense things were being denied to good people. And you realize, well, who am I dealing with? Who am I talking to? Why won't you?
Yeah, but G2, I think
you're dealing with a child.
Yeah, no, G2, I get you. But you're a grown man. But G2, you're a grown man. You've gone through an enormous amount in your life. You've seen an enormous amount. Mm-hmm. So I think when you're a grown man, you're kind of like, okay, wait, nothing's being done. We've lobbied. We've voted for people. I get that. Everybody blows their temper every now and then.
Hold on a minute. Before you all cut me off, let me ask this question. The communities I work in, young people are taught drills that if somebody shoots, fall down, roll towards the edge of a car. These young people are telling you now that in their schools, they have to go through drills if someone comes in shooting in their school. What we have to do is, one of the prerequisites to public service is humility. Being able to listen to people and not get partisan, not get left or right, but deal with the human condition.
Dissolved into a full-on partisan debate. Bloomberg's group is the one that's funding this movement. They're handling all the PR. I mean, we can talk emotions all day, but at the end of the day, we need results.
And absolutely. And what they're saying is that as adults, we have failed them. As adults, we have not made sure that our children are safe. As adults,
I don't know about. G2, because we had this horrific shooting, but the idea that all schools are unsafe in the United States and all schools are going to be subjected to a major shooting.
That's not the only shooting.
Right, but of course it's not the only shooting. But we've had shootings, G2, in Chicago, and we've had gun violence, and we've had the deaths of great young men and great young women, for, as you know, for decades. And we didn't have student walkouts. We didn't have George Clooney fly in. We didn't have any of that.
And as a mainstream society, we have accepted that.
No, we haven't. I haven't accepted it.
Oh, absolutely we have. That is why when young people raise their voices, we want to say that they're being parroted by adults.
That's not.
How many of us have grown up in communities?
No, hold on.
Let me finish. How many of us have grown up in communities?
Hold on, G2.
How many of us?
Hold on. I'll let you talk. But
how many of us?
Let Lauren speak.
Hold on. Let me talk. I gave you a chance. The fact of the matter is that they're being funded by a group. They're giving talking points by a group that is anti-gun. And you know what? We've talked about this from an emotional aspect, but at the end of the day, these legislators don't know what to do. These congressmen don't know what to do. The university doesn't know what to do. But you can't make policy based on emotion. We reported on the Leadership Institute's campus reform all day, where these college students are doing the same thing. They want policy based on emotion. We need facts. It's a constitutional right to have a gun. And at the end of the day, they want to get rid of the guns.
Well, sir, I will tell you right now that I will say this to you, that when young people in the South, children, 12, 13, 14 years old, went to jail and people said they should not do it.
No one's saying
it's analogous, and that's not what anyone's saying, G2. Nobody's saying they do not have a right to speak. What we are saying, G2, is we do not allow children to dictate policy of any type in this country.
I cover young people for a living at campusreform.org, okay? I'm not saying young people shouldn't have a voice. I used to be a Democrat. And I was a young man as well in high school. Young people should have a voice, but they should not be parroted by adults. And furthermore, they should not be dictating policy, which they can't even participate in. They can't even purchase a gun right now.
At the end of the day, young people, at the end of the day, we live, at the end of the day, we live in the most violent country in the world. There are more handgun murders in the United States than any other nation on the planet Earth.
And none of the things they're asking for are going to change any of that.
And there are also more people incarcerated in this country.
Yeah, well, we could do an hour on this, and I actually want to bring you guys back for a special that we do on this, because I think we have a spiritual breakdown, we have a family breakdown, we have a breakdown of basic common sense.
And how about parenting?
Laura, I want to say one more thing. If I can add one more thing.
We're going to go to black in a second because we're out of time.
Children in Chicago, children in Chicago, that they are not being parroted. Children in Philadelphia are not being parroted. They are saying that inequity is violent.
Kids in Chicago.
Closing schools is violent. They are standing up for themselves. And these are children that I work with on a daily basis. So I'm not just regurgitating opinions. These are people that I work with on an everyday basis. And it is an insult to them to tell them that they don't have the right to speak up for their issues.
G2, we'll have you back. We'll do an extended conversation. Fantastic discussion, but we got to go. Up next, the perfect metaphor for Washington spending, one so vast it boggles the mind. Okay, so perhaps you've heard of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, GPGP. It's double the size of Texas. Well, the floating mass of about 79,000 metric tons of plastic. Now, it's fishing nets, all this junk. Well, it's one of the many massive floating islands of all this junk that is floating all around the Earth, right? Well, this one contains 1.8 trillion pieces of plastic, according to the new expert estimates. They did an aerial survey. Well, 1.8 trillion. That's a number that's crazy big. It's too big for us to wrap our minds around. It does all this damage to the environment. We know that. Sucking all the oxygen up, doing damage to wildlife, water supply, food supply. 1.8 trillion pieces of plastic. Well, going back to how we started the show tonight, with a $1.3 trillion GOP spending bill, the Democrats are positively giddy over. 1.3 trillion. It's a figure that's so unfathomably large that many of us, many people, not many, they throw their hands up and they just look the other way because it's a problem. It's such a big problem. We can't deal with this. Just like these massive floating piles of garbage. I know it seems like a weird analogy, but I'm telling you, It's so big, you don't want to deal with it. But I'm here tonight to tell you there is no problem too big for Americans not to fix, or at least to try to fix. That is not the attitude, this giving up attitude about any problem that we have. That's not the attitude that made us the most prosperous and the most powerful nation on earth. We can fix it. We can be honest about it. We can deal with it. We can get all of our innovation and our ingenuity focused on it. We don't have to become a disposable society and throw everything away in the meantime. No, not our kids' future with this ridiculous budget, and not with the waste and mess that we see all over the environment. We don't have to do that anymore. It's not what made us great. When we come back, we'll close it out. Stay there. Going back to the enormity of that big floating garbage patch, this is what President Trump said today on the spending bill.
It became so big because we need to take care of our military, and because the Democrats, who don't believe in that, added things that they wanted in order to get their votes.
Became so big, became so unwieldy, no one thought that they could stop it. Can't be the way we govern. Can't be the way we spend the taxpayer dollars. Up next, Shannon Bream. Good night from Washington. I'll see you back here Monday.